What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. And this is how leadership manifests itself. And I've been there. You don't get notice that you're going to be made the Minister of Justice. You get called around the 20th of March of every 5 years, and you get told you will be the Minister of Justice. And many people that day, their phones are fully charged and they're waiting for that call. But it doesn't get made to many people. And it could one day be made to one of you to be an Attorney General, a Minister of Justice, or any type of minister. And what a tragedy if you're not ready. I put a lot of work in preparing what I'm about to say. So I'm going to go through parts of it, but I'll also skip parts of it, just for the sake of not taking too much time. I was given 15 minutes, and I actually want to use my 15 minutes, because I think what I want to say to you is important. Because there's things about our country at the moment that already, about the level of our public discourse. And I strongly feel lawyers have an investment to make in uplifting the quality of our public discourse. And I also feel we're not making that investment. And I hope this conversation changes your mind about being silent participants in our public discourse. So I just want to really thank you for the opportunity to be able to address you this Friday evening. And to thank the Director, Nelly, for making sure that this happened. To deliver what should be a keynote speech, but to share some insights on leadership and just reflections on the progress we've made as a nation in advancing the rule of law and empowering our communities. My training as a lawyer, my active participation in the private sector, and in many other activities and ventures falls into the broader socio-economic transformative agenda of our country. And it's probably equivalent sufficient knowledge on various aspects concerning leadership in our country, as well as on matters relating to the rule of law and the need to empower our people. And having had relative proximity to power in both the private and the public sector, I've probably been able to deepen some insights on leadership, on power, how it's used, and possibly how it can be optimized. And I'll start with my conclusion. Who a leader surrounds themselves with, it matters. How public opinion is shaped, it matters. And who is shaping public opinion matters. Some authors have correctly observed that leadership is more spoken about in the political context. And I think it's a mistake. Often leadership is routinely admired, it's vilified, it's ridiculed, it's invoked, it's trivialized, explained and speculated about in the media discourse and in every single conversation. My own experience, as having been a private sector leader, is that the moment you enter the public sector, in whatever capacity, you immediately become villainized. You love in the private sector, you villainize in the public sector. And this is dangerous. Our most complex problems are solved in the public sector. When we learn to only vilify, only villains will remain. If many of you look at how strong, capable, competent people who've left the private sector, gone into the public sector, and they get villainized, whether it's on boards, whether it's in government or its agencies, what you're saying to yourself, I don't want to be on a public sector board where my car is planted with drugs. I don't want to be fired as a CEO of a parastatal because I clashed with a minister. And as you say that to yourself, because you're watching the vilification of others, you're only leading the villains, because our most complex problems are addressed in the public sector. And there's a talent mismatch. We need our best brains in the public sector. to solve our most complex problems. Otherwise, we are self-perpetuating a cycle of incompetency, inadequacy, and a lack of progress. And we enable it by allowing this vilification. There are good people in the public sector. And we must not only defend them, we need to join them. And I say that, and I see lots of young people. And I can say it from my own career. I support each and every one of you who need to make money. It's important because it protects your intellectual honesty. When your ability to pay your mortgage is defined by the view that you take, you're going to prefer the payment of your mortgage. Yes. And I need you to finish off paying your mortgages so you can come to the public sector with intellectual honesty so you can speak to power. But as usual, I digress. People matter in governance, but some people do matter more than others. And perhaps because of this, we only focus on political leadership. This thing is giving me hell, and I don't know why.
Just digress.
Yeah, I'm digressing, but I'm going to make my speech longer. Here we are. So some people matter more than others, but perhaps because of this, we focus on those occupying high public offices and exercising power and influence over the many. At law school, we were introduced to leadership theories. I actually need to change something here because it keeps jumping. You must just give me a second. Something is not right. I apologize. I should have checked this earlier. This is what happens when you travel and you don't check your equipment. Anyway, at law school, we were introduced to leadership theories, amongst them Aristotle's dictum that people want a government of laws, not men. And I'll keep talking about men, but I mean individuals, I mean people. But during Aristotle's time, there were women in leadership. So people want a government of laws and not men. This thing is going to drive me nuts. No, it's not Chinese. So I want to answer the close one here. And holding that same thought, we can perhaps agree that men can never be factored out of the equation of government. Men being individuals and their thoughts can't be factored out of the equation of government. And as much as we talk of the system is made up of people, you and I, and there are aspects of the system that can suffer personalization. If the people in the system are incompetent, prejudiced, or corrupt, the system will be incompetent, prejudiced, and corrupt. The key is to have a critical mass of competent, ethical, and thoughtful people in the system. And if we do not avail ourselves to the system, how do we build that critical mass? And if the Trojan horse strategy is too much for you to bear, because if you want to capture a beast, you need to get into its belly. But the beast will try to eat you. The only way it will eat you is if there are many of you. So if the Trojan horse strategy is too much to bear, be mindful that you can exercise leadership from different spheres. And as lawyers, I must ask you, how are you exercising public leadership? Because of our firm allegiance to our Constitution and inclinations towards democracy and the collective vision for our country, we, all of us, must be socialized into the present-day foundational values, including but not limited to the fact that leaders must recognize inherent dignity and inalienable rights of all members of our society. We must recognize and understand that the fundamental rights set out and protected in our Constitution can only be effectively maintained and protected if our society remains democratic in nature and institutions of the state are functionally capacitated and resourced. 3, leaders should have qualities flavored with democratic virtues, including a fundamental understanding that the Constitution we adopted over 34 years ago with our collective resolve to cherish and protect the gains of our long struggle, achieved at the back of a heavy cost, measured in loss of human lives and other forms of sacrifices. Leaders in our society must have a desire to promote among all of us the dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of the Namibian nation among and in association with the nations of the world. And not less important, they must have a political will to achieve a national reconciliation and to foster peace, unity, and a common loyalty to a single state. More importantly, a modern leader, whether those in bureaucracy or those in the executive, they should be committed to the constitutional vision of an effective, responsible, open, and accountable governance. Leaders must have the ability and the political will to migrate our people from the perpetual feelings and sense of socio-economic despair to real economic independence and prosperity. And if we don't do that, populism takes over. There's nothing more dangerous to a state, to a country, to a society than populism. But when you don't resolve real and vital issues, that's what you get. One is correct that our leaders remain seized with a mission, amongst others, to dismantle the legacy of apartheid and colonialism, particularly in the socio-economic sphere. They must at the same time continue to harness democratic ethos, public morality and governance, and they must be suitable to run the country on the basis of values explicitly stated in our Constitution. This must all be geared towards having men and women in leadership who are able and prepared to develop and maintain functional democracy, build a strong state and a robust civil society, and to make transformative policies with the sole aim of achieving social justice, equality, and economic opportunities for all. Our Supreme Court in 2010, in an election-related litigation, highlighted the importance of the rule of law in our society in the following terms. The rule of law is one of the foundational principles of our state. One of the incidents that follows logically and naturally from this principle is the doctrine of legality. In our country, under a constitution as its supreme law, it demands that the exercise of any public power should be authorized by law, either by the constitution itself or by any other law recognized by or made under the constitution. The exercise of public power is only legitimate when lawful. Close quote. So if public function is proposed to exercise powers or perform functions outside the parameters of their legal authority, they in effect usurp powers of state constitutionality entrusted to legislative authority and other public functionaries. The doctrine as a means to determine the legality of administrative conduct is therefore fundamental in controlling and, where necessary, constraining the exercise of public powers and functioning in our constitutional democracy. So who we elect as our leaders matters. It's reassuring and pleasing that numerous judgments, both by the High Court and the Supreme Court of Namibia, enforce this. Over the last decade, their judgments have revealed a strong commitment by our court system to promoting constitutionalism and the rule of law. And we must also be cognizant and recognize amongst ourselves that the good progress we've made in strengthening the rule of law, including in times of national disaster like COVID, was through the commitment of our public leaders to the importance of the rule of law and constitutionalism. For the last 34 years, Namibia has ensured that the rule of law is maintained and that the court's authority and integrity is respected, so that whether in times of national crisis or peace, the government would have no free hand to do as it pleases, and that all measures it adopts meet the exigency that the nation faces, and it must be taken in accordance with the law and subject to our constitution. It's for this reason that the Supreme Court in State v. Lekani highlighted the importance of the state adhering to the rule of law and values enshrined in the constitution. I'm going to skip a little bit, but the important one here is that there was a quote that highlighted that what we saw in the past means that the state must never bend the law to its own ends. And I'd like to pause here. Our leaders and the systems around them have largely respected the rule of law. But I would, however, need to caution that having leaders who respect the law is not guaranteed. On Tuesday, there's a superpower that goes to elections, and one of the leading candidates has been convicted, he's been found guilty of sexual assault. He led an insurrection. He does not respect the Constitution. As a matter of fact, he shows clear admiration for dictatorship and the undermining of democratic values. He says this. Yet, he potentially can lead a superpower. So what it says to us is that our political system is capable of delivering even to us leaders who do not respect the rule of law. We've been lucky for the last 34 years. We'll be lucky in these cycles that come. But we do not know what will happen in 10 or 15 years. So I want to caution that having leaders who respect the law is not guaranteed and it's not enough. What happens when one day we get a leader who doesn't respect the rule of law? That's the day our institutions and the people in them will be tested. Are our institutions strong enough? Are the people in our institutions strong enough? That's a question I leave to you. And I ask these questions because my intention is to push you throughout this talk to take an expansive interpretation of public leadership, which includes you as a leader. While constitutional powers can only be exercised by those defined in the Constitution, and administrative powers can only be used by those mandated to wield them, public leadership is open to all of us. It's not confined to politicians. It's way too important to be confined to politicians. It should never be a brainless exercise of us versus them, which many of us have adopted, and it's dangerous. Because the us, the them, it is just us. This country is us. If it fails, we fail. It should always be what's in the best interest of the country. And what's in the best interest of this country is respect for the rule of law. And this is a democratic design issue. Leadership is required at all levels: civic, political, bureaucratic. And we should thus accept that our views will often intersect, reinforce, or conflict. And that's fine. But when we remain silent and allow public discourse to be dominated by the uninformed, you're not exercising the leadership required of you at your level. With social media and new forms of media, how societal mindsets are shaped and how people consume information has become fluid. And sometimes fact-free. In the past, when you read an article from a thought leader, they would have had some form of legitimacy in the civic space. In this day and age, everybody's a political analyst. On social media, everybody's a lawyer and a legal expert. We no longer confine spaces to experts. We are all experts. I can wake up tomorrow and I become a green hydrogen expert. This is the society we've created and lived in. In this day and age, an anonymous account can garner on social media, can garner millions of views, reposts, retweets, with an opinion that has no factual basis and is harmful to social cohesiveness. And when thought leaders are anonymous accounts on the internet, I was just getting heated in this damn thing once this ever person. I'll get there. So no factual basis, you go viral. I do wonder what happened to our informed thought leaders, many of whom are lawyers. Why is it that you are so quiet? When we allow the unreasonable among us to define public discourse, we allow our democratic values to be undermined. We allow the rule of law to be undermined. What was previously confined to those with public leadership roles has, due to socio-technological changes, been extended to anyone with an internet connection. And where do you place yourselves as lawyers in this conversation? What is your role in upholding the rule of law and constitutional values when we all read problematic statements in the newspapers, we see them on television, We hear them on radio and consume them on social media with nothing but a shrug. I believe that the burden that being a lawyer bestows on you is to feel the weight of responsibility, to bear into conversations where factual, objective assessments are required. Having proximity to power, I have an observation I'd like to share. It's a personal view and I may be wrong, but Namibia is a country where the rule of law is respected, but it's not always understood. And this places a responsibility on lawyers to play a meaningful role to bridge this gap. First and foremostly, those who serve public leaders, and many of you do, have to put the rule of law at the center of the advice that you provide. Secondly, and this is my charge to you as a law society, we must elevate intellectual rigor in our public discourse. For societies to be enlightened, we need thought leaders who address the topics of national concern with a requisite balance of nuance, insight, objectivity, and most importantly, an understanding of what the rule dictates. Lawyers are well placed to play this role, and I look forward to seeing more lawyers becoming public intellectuals and thought leaders in our society and helping to elevate debate in the public domain. But also when public leaders are making decisions, to protect public leaders from adverse decisions of course, we need to protect the rule of law in the rooms where decisions are being made. And you need to do that by speaking up, especially when it's uncomfortable to do so. The political system is capable of delivering political leaders who do not respect the rule of law. And we've been through this. The examples are there. And who then protects the rule of law? If your answer is it's the judges, then Lord Atkinson's findings resonance as he states that the laws are not silent, they speak the same language in war and peace, and that it's always been one of the pillars of freedom, that judges are no respecters of persons and stand between the subject and any attempted encroachment on his liberty by the executive. Close quote. May I then ask the question in a different way? If one day we have political leaders who do not respect the rule of law, who else, apart from judges, help to protect the rule of law? It's you and your ilk. People who understand the law must protect it. Not just in the High Court and Supreme Court, but also in the courts of public opinion and the worst court of all, the kangaroo court of social media. I leave you with a story. In October 2018, Namibia hosted a land conference. And one of the most underreported events that I personally saw unfold at that land conference is we had two former presidents who enjoy incredible social and political capital, suggesting to thunderous applause that a referendum must be held in terms of Article 132, subsection 5 of the Constitution, to enable government to dilute Chapter 3 protections on property and to enable expropriation without compensation. And it was wildly popular. Two former presidents had this view. It was a paper delivered by a lawyer that disagreed and explained Article 131 of the Constitution. And this lawyer said in a very compelling manner that a referendum that seeks to diminish rights can't work, and that the same intent of expropriation of land with just compensation is provided for within the ambit of the law and in a manner that protects the rule of law and addresses the legitimate cries for justice of the people. This was not popular. And in this massive conference, this paper was not well received. But it was the view that held that day. And Caesar, I thank you that day, because he recognized people's pain, but he was willing to stand and contradict two former presidents on their interpretation. And he defended the Constitution, and I'll quote you, Caesar. I didn't know you were going to be here. I quote him, he said that I recognize that our difficult past injustices must be addressed, but without jettisoning our constitutional values and undermining our foundational constitutional values, such as unity and reconciliation. Close quote. He's saying this to two former presidents who are powerful. We all love them. And I was amazed at his courage. to say that in that forum where everybody agreed with this view. And this is the importance of courage, of lawyers protecting constitutional values. And when I read that quote, I realized Caesar's written English, and his spoken English, they don't match. But what we read that day was very important. And this is the value of intellectual discourse. That is compelling, is prepared to disagree with the powerful and the popular, but remains rooted in the rule of law. And that is the charge I have for each of you. Thank you very much.